Once more, give rise to bodhicitta and listen with the motivation of bodhicitta. So continuing with the text on page 71, when you have a boat, you should cross the river. When you have an army of brave men, you should put down the enemy. When you have water, manure, warm weather and moisture all together, you should sow as much seed as you can. So this is to say that now that we have this precious human rebirth, we must apply ourselves to the Dhamma. We need to practice the Dhamma. If we wait until we die, well then it'll be too late. We will have lost our chance. When you have the opportunity, you need to make use of that opportunity. Like when you have a boat, you need to use the chance of having that boat to cross the river. Cross an enormous river like the Karnali River, for instance, which you cannot get over on your own. You need a boat. So when you have the boat, you need to use the boat to cross the river. When you have an army of brave men, you should use them to put down your enemy. When you have this human rebirth, this opportunity to practice the Dhamma, you need to use it. Use it to practice the Dhamma. Like when all the causes and conditions for sowing seed come together. So early spring, the beginning of warmth, of water, manure and so on. At that point you need to sow your seeds right if you want to have a harvest. Now that you have this precious human rebirth endowed with the freedoms and advantages, you need to use it right here and now to practice the Dhamma. If you wait, then the opportunity will slip through your fingers and it will be too late. So reflect, every time I've obtained the suitable support for accomplishing the extraordinary goal of enlightenment, it has so far been wasted. As Nagarjuna says in his letter to a friend, if we were to pile up all the bones from the bodies we've had in past lives, they would be bigger. They would form a mountain higher than Mount Meru, the highest mountain in the universe. If we were to gather up all the tears we've shed, they would amount to more than the entire ocean and so on. We've had so many human lives in the past, but we failed to make good use of them, and so we're still here in samsara, wandering in samsara. If we don't make use of this current life and make it meaningful, we won't get another chance in the future. I'm just quoting various lines of scripture by Jigme Lingpa and so on that say exactly the same thing. So rather than let the freedoms and advantages go to waste, I would rather die than not do everything I can to practice the sublime Dhamma genuinely. So these days, a lot of people might think, oh, making this human rebirth meaningful is to say, become an engineer, become a doctor, become some great professional, become wealthy, what have you. That is not making this precious human birth meaningful. That is not how to do it. How to do it is to make your life meaningful by practicing the Dhamma. To practice the sublime Dhamma genuinely in order to nurture and prepare for my survival in future lives. So, rather than thinking that your farming and agriculture is so important, well, yeah, that's going to result in what? In maybe one harvest, one crop that's going to fill your belly for one season or half a year. But it's not going to help you any more than that. It's the sublime Dhamma that is going to help us, truly nurture us, life after life. Thinking that I might be able to do so, precious teacher, in you I put my trust. We need to arouse intense devotion and determination to be free. Determination means... Also, to backtrack, when it says, I will do that in order to nurture and prepare for my survival in future lives, we should have such a strong determination that we are willing to die. We would rather die than let this opportunity to go to waste. Then, with intense devotion and determination to be free, pray one pointedly as follows. So with such heartfelt, fervent devotion that you are brought to tears, overwhelming, intense renunciation and devotion. And then with that devotion and determination, or renunciation we could say, you should recite the following lines of supplication in the way with the melody Rinpoche just chanted. So, Namo, glorious embodiment of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 3 times, and so on. Soul abiding refuge. Soul abiding ultimate, enduring, constant refuge. The Guru, who embodies all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 3 times, is the soul abiding ultimate refuge, the refuge of all times. Other refuges, like leaders or politicians or powerful people, we might put our trust in them, take refuge in them in the sense, but they can only protect us in a limited way, only temporarily. The soul abiding refuge is none other than our Guru, the kind teacher and Lord. And the blessings that we will receive from our teacher, the teacher whom we supplicate, will be equal to the perception that we have. If we regard them as the embodiment of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as the Buddha in person, then we'll receive the blessings of the Buddha in person. If we lack that kind of pure perception, then the blessings likewise will be lacking. So we should understand that the Guru we're supplicating here is inseparable from, is no different from Guru Rinpoche. As I pray to you, precious teacher, bless me incomparably, kind Lord. As Rinpoche said, the blessings that we receive, the strength of the blessings we receive, are a reflection of our perception of the teacher, pure perception. These freedoms and advantages are so difficult to find. Bless me that I may make full use of this significant human body. Bless me incomparably, kind Lord. So again, when we talk about making this precious human rebirth meaningful, we're not talking about mundane accomplishments, becoming some celebrated professional or wealthy or what have you. That is completely mistaken, perverted understanding. Making human rebirth meaningful means to use one's human rebirth to practice the Dharma genuinely, to practice the Dharma and progress on the path. So there are many stories we could tell here. For instance, in the words of my perfect teacher and the Chuchi, the instructions on severance give stories of practitioners like Karak Gomchung, who really took to heart the reflection of the precious human rebirth, how difficult it is to attain, and that was reflected in their life. There are stories like that we could tell, beautiful stories to illustrate these points, but we just don't have time here. So if we had time, we could apply the stories and anecdotes mentioned in the words of my perfect teacher in the chapter on the precious human rebirth and tell those here, and other stories. Also stories like Jigme Lingpa's life story and so on. Many stories we have that we could tell here to further illustrate this point, but we just don't have time to go through them. The lines of prose, Drusha Rinpoche's text itself is so profound, so we're spending quite a lot of time explaining and going through Drusha Rinpoche's own profound words and ending up with not much time to go through stories. But anyway, know that there are these wonderful stories that we could use to illustrate these points. Now we come to the next subsection, the second of the 4 mind changings, reflecting on death and impermanence. This is explained in 3 sections, reflecting on the inevitability of death, the uncertainty of when one will die, on the fact that when one dies, nothing can help one. In the words of my perfect teacher, then we find reflections. When it comes to the reflection of impermanence, there's a 6-fold presentation that explains the impermanence by means of looking at the impermanence of the external environment, of sublime, powerful beings, and so on. So here we have a slightly different presentation, but which contains all of these same essential points and has its own unique qualities here. There is nothing, no aspect of impermanence, death and impermanence that is not included in this 3-fold presentation that we find here. So reflecting on the inevitability of death. This has 3 parts: reflecting on the inevitability of death by considering the universe and beings in general, the inevitability of death by considering the diamond body, the Vajra body of the sublime beings, and so forth. So that's the same, actually. These 2 points are the same as 2 of the reflections we find in the words of my perfect teacher, reflecting on the inevitability of death by considering different examples. So essentially the same as Pacharamati's presentation in the words of my perfect teacher, just a slightly different order or angle. The words of my perfect teacher is a text I have taught many times. Such a extraordinarily wonderful, blessed text that people have such an appetite for receiving that text. And it also has helped me enormously to transform mind. It's really had an impact on my life, a big impact on my life. So I've taught it, I think, once in Kathmandu in recent years, and moreover 4, 5, 6 or more times up at Humla and surrounding areas in the Himalayas. So the first of these, reflecting on the inevitability of death by considering the universe and beings in general. So actually, to be honest, the very basis and foundation of the words of my perfect teacher and this excellent commentary is Longchenpa's trilogy of resting the mind, actually. The words of my perfect teacher is such a precious text, but actually if you look further into it, it's really a condensation of the omniscient Longchenpa's trilogy of resting the mind, and also Korsum. So the teachings of Longchenpa are just inconceivable. If this support with its freedoms and advantages, so extremely difficult to find, was something that once obtained never died, that would be fine. So if we'd attained this human birth and it was something we weren't going to lose, we weren't going to die, that would be okay. This human rebirth, endowed with freedoms and advantages, this precious human rebirth, is something of extraordinary value. And if it wasn't going to die, then there would be no problem. But since it is subject to death, meaning subject to being lost, to vanishing, well, that means something very precious is going to be lost, something very precious and valuable is going to vanish. And we never know when we're going to die. We never know when we're going to die. It's when or how we're going to die. It's uncertain. We could be struck by a bolt of lightning and die just like that, or die suddenly. So we need to be constantly careful. So as it says here, it is not eternal, this body is not eternal, far from it, and you are certain to die, but we don't know when and we don't know how. At the very longest, we will live for 100 or so years. That's very unlikely, but that's the very longest. After 100 years, none of us here will still be alive. Even after a few decades, probably none of us here will be alive, maybe just a few of the tiny children. They'll be adults. All of us, all the rest of us will have died, will have vanished from the surface of this earth. Most of us will be completely forgotten. Even our names will no longer remain in this earth. No one will remember us. Was there a few rare people who leave behind a legacy and are remembered many decades or even centuries after they die. Rimshi mentioned someone specific in Dolpo, but the majority of us will be completely forgotten a few decades after we die. No one will remember us. Our names, our activities will have vanished from the surface of the earth, quite literally. So what is the use of pursuing status and name when it's going to vanish so quickly after death? There's only very few people whose legacy remains for a long time after they die. Like Rinpoche's mentioning a few specific people up in Homla and so on, but everyone else is forgotten. And even if your legacy does remain, well, so what? Obscured by this sort of wrong thinking. So everyone thinks, I will die eventually, yeah, one day I'll die. But up until the moment of death, they go on hoping they will not die for a while. But this is a mistaken thinking, because we do not know when we're going to die. There's no certainty. One can die very quickly. One can lose one's life very fast. Look at the conflict in Israel and Gaza. Thousands of people are killed over the course of 30 minutes. Thousands of people are killed. So it doesn't take long to die, and we never know when we're going to die. Obscured by this sort of wrong thinking, they pass the time being distracted by the things of this life, which is to say, accumulating money, pursuing financial security, material comfort, enjoying the sense pleasures, getting distracted by the sense pleasures. They put off accomplishing anything for the next life until later. They put things off. That's procrastination, laziness, thinking, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later. Putting things off, and they are overpowered by laziness. So Rinpoche is now speaking about the Humla and some of the Himalayan dialects, which often there's this mistaken idea these days. A lot of the people living in the border regions think that Tibetan dialects they speak are somehow impure or somehow inferior to the Tibetan spoken in, say, the central region of Tibet proper. But actually this is wrong. The Tibetan spoken in most of the Himalayan border regions is more pure and authentic than the Tibetan spoken in central Tibet, for instance. She gave some specific examples of this. This is why we have to meditate on impermanence. In front of everyone who is born, waiting there is death, and even I am not exempt. I here is Buddha Shakyamuni. These are his own words. Practice Dharma there from this very day. Every single person is heading only in one direction, the direction of death. This is the case for all of us, young and old, even from a newborn baby who's just popped out of the womb. From that moment onwards, they're heading only in one direction, towards death. And who knows how we will die. Our destination is none other than death, but how we'll get there, in what way we'll die, we don't know. In the past, there were limited ways that people could die, certain types of illness, or falling off a cliff, or having this or that accident, but these days there are hundreds more ways to die, right? In car accidents, plane accidents, strange new illnesses like HIV, or in the past that was fatal. These days we have new illnesses that are proving fatal. Or strange, bizarre things happening in this world. There are thousands, literally thousands of ways that we can die these days, whereas in the past there were just hundreds. Generally speaking, so now we're on page 74, the things we perceive as the world, the whole array of the universe with the beings it contains, a phenomena created simply through causes and conditions coming together. We perceive the external environment, mountains and fields and walls and so on. These are all dependently arisen appearances. They come together through the coming together of causes and conditions, namely atoms and so on and so forth, different types of matter. They appear to us, external to us. So in the sutras, Buddha talks about, in his teachings, Buddha talks about how all phenomena, including the external environment, appear as interdependent arisings, manifestations of interdependent causes and conditions, namely the elements of earth, water, fire, wind, and space, combining, and through coming together, then forming everything we know as the external environment: mountains, fields, walls, buildings, everything. And they all rest essentially on space. In this way, the whole universes and world realms appear. And then over time, due to the force of impermanence, they disintegrate, and we have this cycle of the formation of universe, the abiding of the universe, the disintegration of the universe, and empty, kind of a void period of voidness. These different periods of formation of the universe are explained and referenced in the words of my perfect teacher on the reflection of impermanence. So modern scientists too speak about this, the formation and disintegration of the universe, how the universe will only remain, this world of ours will only remain for 1 million or a certain amount of years, and then it will disintegrate in this and that way. So this is to say that the external environment, it seems to us so reliable, so solid, so permanent, but the external environment itself is impermanent, transient, and subject to change. One day this world appears, and once appeared, this world then disappears, as in the past, so it will be in the future. Know that thus it is with all phenomena. In his letter to a friend, Nagarjuna says, the ground, Mount Meru, and the oceans too will be consumed by 7 blazing suns. Of things with form, not even ashes will be left. So in which is the Abhidhamma teachings, the formation and disintegration of the world is explained in a lot of detail. It's explained that at the end of this eon, the world will be destroyed by, it says, 7 blazing suns. What this means is the strength of the sun, of sunlight, of heat, will be intensified 7 times. And this heat will burn up the world so that all the oceans evaporate and the whole world is incinerated. There's no doubt about the validity of Buddha's words and the words of the sublime beings. This is how the world will be destroyed at the end of the eon. And then things with form, not even ashes will be left. No need to speak of puny, frail man. If the external world is seemingly solid, mountains and environment, if even the mountains are going to be destroyed, there's no need to mention us puny people. We have no real strength, right? We are weak, we are feeble, we are frail. Compare us even to other animals, like an elephant. When an elephant goes mad and goes out on a rampage, just with a single kind of flick of its trunk or stamp of its foot, it can just destroy human beings, right? Of course, destroy houses and so on as well. So us human beings, we are not powerful, we are not strong. If even the external world is going to fall apart, there's no need to mention that we too will fall apart. As for the beings grouped together in the 3 worlds and the 6 realms, the lower realms of hell, hungry ghost animals, the higher realms of humans, demigods and gods, the 3 worlds of higher, middling and lower and so on. No matter what status or form they might have taken rebirth in, due to their positive and negative actions in past lives, they may have all kinds of good or bad experiences. We can just think about people, actually. Just the differences between human beings. Forget about other types of beings. Of course, our experiences of happiness and suffering are different. You would just compare the palms of people's hands. Some people have, say, long hands, some people have short hands, slim hands, fat hands. Everyone's fingerprints and palm lines are different. So why do these differences come from? These differences in appearance, in body, in experience, they come from karma. from the karma previously accumulated by each and every being. So we have sowed the seeds for our experience, every aspect of our own experience. Just like Buddha said, where do all the different shades of color in a peacock's feather come from? All those hundreds of different shades of blue and green and purple and so on. Every single one of them has its respective cause and condition in past karma, past actions performed. So Buddha, with his omniscience, has perfect understanding of the entire web of karma. It's extraordinary to think about the intricate causes and conditions, set of causes and conditions that give rise to phenomena, and all the differences and aspects of each and every phenomena. Just like rice, there are so many different types of rice in Thailand. I heard of scientists examining rice and seeing that it has 70 or so different cells. One grain of rice contains 70 different types of cell, and each cell provides a different type of vitamin, performs a different function. Some provide shape, some color, some different types of nourishment, function. It's extraordinary. Phenomena, relative appearing phenomena, are infinite in their variety. Infinite and inconceivable in their variety. So to this end, Rinpoche is quoting some lines of scripture which speak to the fact that all of the infinite variety of relative appearing phenomena, they all come from specific causes and conditions, as taught and understood by Buddha and his omniscient mind. And it's also taught, everything that is interdependent is also emptiness. Emptiness itself arises as interdependence, and everything that is independent, all interdependently arisen phenomena, which is to say all relative phenomena, all phenomena are emptiness by virtue of being interdependent. They're also impermanent for that same reason. Yet whether they have long lives lasting kalpas, short lives that are over in barely a moment, so it seems there are beings who live as long as an entire kalpa. There are others who are born in the morning and dead by night. And modern scientists are also aware now of this, of these kinds of varieties in beings' lifespan. But each and every one of them, they all end up dying, no matter how long they live for. So like in the words of my perfect teacher, Pacha Rinpoche mentioned some types of beings that live for tens of thousands of years. But at the end, they still die. They too die. No being is exempt from death. As Ashvaghosha says, this is the Sanskrit name of Master Dayang, who Rinpoche mentioned the other day. Of all those born upon this earth or in the upper realms, did you ever see or hear or even pause to doubt that some were born and have not died? Have you heard of anyone in this world who was born in the past and is still alive, who is not subject to death? Have you ever even heard about such a thing or had cause to doubt it? No matter who they are, high or low, there's no one who is immune to death. You'd think if there was someone immune to death, it would be Buddha Shakyamuni. But Buddha Shakyamuni died. He passed into Nirvana in Kushinagar, and likewise Guru Rinpoche. The whole of the three worlds of existence is impermanent, moving and dissolving like clouds in autumn. Beings are born and die under the fickle control of their good and bad deeds, manifesting in all kinds of ways, like the choreographic movements of a skilled dancer. People's lives race by, swift and brief, like a flash of lightning in the sky that vanishes in an instant, or like a stream cascading down a mountainside. Like a flash of lightning in the sky. Just as there's no turning back a river which flows until it reaches its lowest point, nothing can stop the span of one's life running out. One is certain to die. As we read in the Sutra of Extensive Play, this 4 lines of verse that are quoted so often, the 3 worlds are impermanent like autumn clouds, beings are born and die as if in a ballet. The 3 worlds, the worlds of desire, form and formlessness, they are all impermanent, just like autumn clouds. Autumn clouds which gather in the sky and move very fast through the sky. They start off in the east, they move to the west. The 3 worlds are impermanent and fleeting like that. Beings are born and die as if in a ballet. Whether it be humans or other types of beings. Beings is the word that's translated here as beings literally means goer or migrator, a wandering being. So all of these wandering beings, so not just humans but all other types of beings, animals, bugs, bees and other types of beings, they are born and die as if in a ballet, as if a dance. For instance, if you have a dance or a performance, in the morning a performer will dance as a deity, in the evening they'll dance as a demon or another character. So there is, it's not permanent, it's not lasting. And we see this impermanence in our own lives, right? We see the people in our lives dying one by one after the other. Some people are dying suddenly, some people are dying slowly. None of this is permanent. A permanent life is like a flash of lightning in the sky. The lifespan of people is not permanent, it's not long-lasting. It's fleeting as a flash of lightning in the sky. It appears suddenly, but just as soon as it appears, it's gone, it's over. So when we talk about life, there are 3 words for this in Tibetan, or related to this in Tibetan. We could translate them as lifespan, longevity, and life force. And in astrology, medicine, and so on, then these are defined to distinguish from one another. Different aspects of life. So, there's a life force which each and every being has a certain life force with a certain duration, and just translating loosely here, but yeah, this is what we call life force. And as long as that life force is intact, then someone will not be vulnerable really to, for instance, being hit by a bullet or something. You sometimes hear of someone who it's in some situation where they really should have died, but they don't, right? That's because, you could say that's because their life force is still intact, but as soon as their life force degenerates, then they're vulnerable and they can die. And then we have another word, tse, which is lifespan, the duration. And then life energy, sok. which is like what the vital life wind. When your vital life wind ceases, you stop breathing, then you die. Very roughly, this is a very kind of approximate explanation of these three different aspects of life. They're explained in more detail, and sometimes in slightly different ways in the astrological texts and so on. So this was just a brief kind of introduction to these different aspects of life. Life force, lifespan, and you'd say life energy. Those might not be the best translations, but so the life force, what we call life force or La, is related to the movement of the movement of the planets, the sun and moon, the movement of the sun and moon, or we could say the progression of time. These details are explained in the astrological texts in great detail and depth, and there's some real profound, interesting and profound things to learn from those texts. In any case, then we have the second aspect of life, which is a lifespan. So a lifespan, in a sense, is set from the time of our birth. We each have a kind of determined lifespan. I could say a karmic lifespan. And this lifespan can be kind of spirited away by different forces or factors, and then there are various rituals that can be done to gather back that lost lifespan. But this life, so here the word person's life, a lifespan, is like a flash of lightning in the sky. It passes by very fast, just like a mountain torrent or waterfall. It rushes swiftly on. Now we come to the next reflection, reflecting on the inevitability of death by considering the diamond body and so forth. Look at the Buddhas who have come to this world of forbearance. The world of forbearance is the name of our current world system. Vipashi, Shikin, Vishvabu, and so on, and Shakyamuni. These are the previous Buddhas who have appeared so far in this world. So it's actually 4 of these Buddhas listed have appeared already in this world, in this period of time, which we call the excellent eon. It's said that 1,000 Buddhas in total will appear in this excellent eon, and so far 4 of them have appeared. So Kemodaza Rinpoche when teaching, would mention that this period of time we're in, this eon, he would say this eon, which is an excellent eon, because the Buddhas have appeared and will appear in it. So from among these, the Buddhas listed have appeared, but also passed away, also disappeared. They blazed with the light and majesty of the major and minor marks, like the full moon in autumn. And yet, their appearance did not remain. They too were subject to impermanence. When it says these radiant beings, their bodies shining with light, the word shining here, there are a lot of this and other adjectives, similar adjectives can be defined in kind of specific, slightly different ways. Anyway, we won't go into that. Their voices clear and soft, their minds limpid and free of stain. In this way they appeared firm and stable as diamonds, yet they all passed into nirvana. all passed into Nirvana is an honorific, respectful way of saying that basically they died. They passed away. So if even these great beings died, no need to mention us. Simply no need to mention it. Reflect on this and ask yourself, why should my body, which is just devoid of essence as a bubble, last forever? A little bubble that appears on the surface of water. Bubble or froth that appears on the surface of water. Just appears on the surface of water, and a second later it pops and disappears. There is no certainty to anything, even to the lifespans of the teachers. Just because someone is alive and well right now, it's no guarantee that they'll still be alive in the morning. This is the same for ordinary people. It's also the same for teachers. You never know what will happen. There could be an accident. There could be some sudden medical problem. There are more than 400 different medical illnesses, physical illnesses that afflict the body. Some of them can come up just very suddenly and steal one's life away. You can be... There's no guarantee that just because we're here well listening to the teachings now, that tomorrow morning we'll still be alive. There are 4 different types of illness as well, circumstantial illness and so on. She mentioned all of them. This is to say there are a lot of different types of illnesses that can afflict us. In sayings on impermanence, Buddha says, if even the body of the Sugata, blazing with 1,000 marks, accomplished from hundreds of meritorious actions, is impermanent, how will one's body, as undependable as a bubble that bursts, not certainly perish? There is nothing that is eternal. So we need to really think about this. If Buddha himself, if the Buddha's own body, the body of the Enlightened One, is impermanent, how can we presume to think that our body is impermanent? We never know when we're going to die. The person you love most in the world, your husband, your wife, your children, they too, you never know when they will die. If we meditate on impermanence, reflect on impermanence from now on, when impermanence does strike in our life, we will be able to take it. We'll be able to accommodate it, to accept it. Some people experience loss, like they lose a loved one, and then they're overcome by grief. They actually go mad with grief. That's because they have not taken impermanence to heart. They haven't reflected on impermanence, and so when it strikes, they're just destroyed by it. If from now we reflect on impermanence, we take it to heart, we accept it, then when impermanence strikes, it won't really shake us. We won't be surprised, we won't be shocked, we won't be overwhelmed. So Kimbuchuki Rinpoche would say, Kimbuchuki Rinpoche would say, when practitioners die, it's actually not a good thing. It's actually not a great thing if they die if they're lying on their deathbed and they call their loved ones to them, their relatives to them, one by one, and give them advice, give them instructions, leave a testament and a will and so on. In a worldly sense, that's often regarded as a good thing, a good way to die. But Kimbuchuki Rinpoche said, actually, that's not a good thing. It shows attachment. It shows fixation. Practitioners should just die completely at peace, without any business, any attachment to anything or anyone. So, calling all your relatives and loved ones to your bedside and giving them a final embrace, giving them final advice, and so on and so forth. These are actually expressions of attachment, signs of attachment and fixation. And as a practitioner, we should be free of attachment, right? So Kimbuchuki Rinpoche would speak about that. The protectors of the world fill the world with great beams of light. Their majesty and merit are renowned through all the heavens and the earth. They are the lords of all worlds, adorned with the greatest fortune, and yet for them too the time will come to die. Now we're on page 76. O monks, look at all these riches that fade and are essenceless, Buddha said. As I remember my past lives and cyclic existence, even though I was Brahma and so on, an inconceivable number of times I was never satiated. So she says, I'm always looking to the left of me. I don't know why this is. I need to twist myself to the right. So she's just joking with the audience up here on this stage. Maybe all the kind of handsome, impressive people are sitting on my left and not on my right. That's why I'm always looking to the left. Anyway, I'm just joking. So Buddha says, in the past I was Brahma, I was Vishnu, I took rebirth as these powerful gods many times. But I was never satisfied. Those states never last. I transmigrated, which is I fell from those states to the lower realms. So even the most powerful gods in the world, Brahma, Vishnu, and so on, those are beings who are also subject to impermanence and death. Even if you reach those high, lofty states in psychic existence, divine states, you're still subject to impermanence and death. Eventually, you too will fall from those states back into the lower realms. Gods who've accomplished concentration, spirits who can take human form, and so on, living for kalpas on end, if even they are impermanent, need one mention human beings? Everyone is too far away from me here in this tent. Most of you are sitting kind of below the stage, quite far away, and I can't see people one by one, so I can't recognize all the people I know. It would be helpful if I could, and I could kind of point my finger at one person and say something more specific to this end. That would help. Things would become more specific, more pointed, more personal. And that's how the teachings should be. It said that the pith instructions, the practical instructions, should expose one's hidden faults. This means they need to be personal. They need to be direct and personal. Expose one's faults and reveal our shortcomings. But it's difficult to do that here when I can't see people really. But that said, all these points we're mentioning and discussing in a more general sense, they are pertinent to all of us. They apply to each and every one of us. None of us are beyond impermanence. All of us are subject to impermanence, so we need to acknowledge that. Okay, what we're talking about here is talking about me, my situation. I'm subject to impermanence. My life is impermanent. My life is fleeting. We shouldn't, our attention, when we receive the teachings, we always need to apply each and every point we hear to ourselves, our own minds, our own lives, our own faults. We shouldn't apply them to others, thinking, oh, yeah, we're talking about impermanence here, so that means so-and-so over there is impermanent. We need to rather think, okay, I'm impermanent. How does this apply to me? As I said, the teacher's instructions should expose the student's faults. But these days, if we do that, if the teacher exposes the student's faults personally and publicly, then a student might feel, I think Rinpoche is saying a student might feel angered or offended or something, but actually that's how it should be. And that's, in any case, that's how we should apply the instructions, directly to ourselves. If we think the teachings are talking about other people, other people's faults, other people's situations, and we don't apply them to ourselves, then we're listening to the Dhamma in the wrong way. It says here, universal emperors with dominion over the 4 continents. There are so many nice stories we could tell here to bring these points home. But yeah, again, we don't have time. Anyway, all of them, not a single being is exempt from death. Exempt from death. Emperors who possess the 7 jewels, kings and ministers, monastic Brahmins, householders and the rest, all these beings are impermanent. They are like beings in a dream. So we've already explained and spoken about all of these points above, so I won't say much more here. I'm mindful that I really do need to get through a certain amount of pages each day, especially since a lot of you have come here from far away, from France and I think she said Germany, and very far away. You've you've flown here and probably have your return tickets booked, your dates fixed. So if I don't get through the text on time and you end up having to change your tickets and so on, that would be a big inconvenience. But all of these quotations that are mentioned here, they're all rich with meaning, potent and blessed, so we should take their meaning to heart even if we don't have time to go through them word by word. So now moving on to the next reflection, reflecting on the inevitability of death by investigating different examples. In this world of ours, there's been a change as the past stage of complete endowment has progressed through the age of half endowment and so on. So this is talking about the different periods of time in this eon. We could also say the age of complete endowment, we could translate that as golden age, that then led to a more kind of less fortunate age, the age of half endowment, that's led to a age of third endowment, so even less endowed age, to the present age of conflict, the present degenerate age of conflict. These different ages also relate to the, I think Rinpoche was saying the four classes of Tantra. So, we have the 4 outer tantras, the 4 classes of Tantra, the outer tantras of Kriya, Upa and Yoga, and the inner Tantra, the inner unsurpassable tantras. These are all emphasized more or less in different ages. So in the age of complete endowment, the outer tantras would have been more applicable, where beings' afflictions were less strong, and so on and so forth. These points are explained in the texts. So now we find ourselves in the present age of conflict. Within a human lifespan, there's also change through its 4 stages. So within a human lifespan, we pass through different periods of life. The period of infancy, childhood, youth, old age, and infirmity. We could explain this, divide the human life into further periods, being newborn, into 8 or also, into 8 periods, which Rinpoche is running through. The period of infancy, the period of childhood, the period of youth, which is the period of it's a young adulthood, where one's strength and mental agility are perfect at their peak. Then from the age of 13 to 40, we kind of remain. We have a period where we remain pretty much this. I think Rinpoche said the same in terms of strength. Then in the 50s, one starts to grow weak in terms of body and mind. So I'm now 61, and this is really happening, beginning the period of old age in infirmity, so which means that one's eyesight, one's earsight, and so on degenerates. As a result of my hearing getting worse, recently I got into a quarrel with my attendant. My attendant cabinet told me, "Oh, so and so." He said, "So and so from this area has passed away," and I misheard the place name because of my own poor hearing. And I thought, but there's no one in Salang who we know who could have died, and so I questioned what he said. I said, "You must be wrong. You must be wrong. What you've said," but I misheard what he said because of my poor hearing, my ear hearing that is getting worse because of my age. Anyway, that was a funny anecdote. And then as you get older, 70 and 80, your teeth start falling out, your hair is all grey. So from 70 on, you're really in the period of old age and infirmity. The whole body starts falling apart. And then after that, you enter the period of death, where you're basically just waiting for death, just waiting to die. And those with more loving children, with better children, will at least be looked after by their children in that period of old age when they're waiting to die, so to speak. And those who aren't so fortunate, or those whose children aren't decent in that way, will be left, and they might even die on their own and not be discovered for days after they've died. So this human lifespan, our human life too, is comprised of these different periods. A single year too changes over its 4 seasons. It's all impermanent. Impermanent too are all the beings. So all the beings that we now see gathered in one place, like a crowd of people assembled in a marketplace and so on, they may seem permanent for a while, but they quickly disperse. There is nothing lasting about these gatherings. Like Padamba Sangye said in his advice to the Dingri people, he said, "Do not conflict." He said, "People of Dingri, do not quarrel, for you will not be together long." So there's no point for husbands and wives and spouses to quarrel. There's no point for families to quarrel, because you never know how long you've got together. So why waste your time quarreling? It's not only others that are concerned. Think of when you were young, when your parents, family, livestock, guard dogs, and possessions were all gathered together in your house. It seemed then that they would be there forever, and because of your clinging, you got involved in disputes and in trying to prevent this or achieve that. Yet where are they now? Things are no longer the same. Some people have died, some have gone away, some have come together, others have separated. So wherever you stay, whoever you accompany, whatever work you do, there is only one thing to keep in mind: separation. Do not fight with or harm anyone, and do your best to tame your mind. Avoid quarreling, avoid fighting, avoid hurting others, because you never know when you're going to be parted. Whatever situation you're in, whoever you're with, that situation is not going to last. So do your best. Remember this and do your best to tame your mind. As Buddha said, the best of all thoughts is the thought of impermanence. So keeping impermanence, the truth of impermanence in mind, refrain from fighting, from harming anyone else. So there's discussion there about possible small error in the text. But anyway, the meaning is clear. Think of old villages that have fallen into ruin in your early life, or in the meanwhile, or even before. But since if you watch the National Geographic, you can see ancient ruins of really old houses and settlements in India and China and other places. And you can then really think just all these years ago. Think of all the people that must have lived in these villages. Now only ruins remained in these villages and cities. Families, husbands, wives, friends, families, all with their own concerns and preoccupations, their own animals, livelihoods and so on. They must have got caught up in conflict and strife and this and that. But now nothing remains. Nothing more than some dusty ruins remain. As Guru Rinpoche said, all the wealth that you might accumulate is just like the honey of bees. So think how bees make honey, hundreds and thousands of them working together to make honey, a hive full of honey, and then a human comes along, smokes it out and takes all of the honey, and all their hard work is gone, just taken away. Our wealth is just like that. You might put in so much hard work, strife, and even get into conflicts and so on for the sake of accumulating wealth, but nothing lasting or really meaningful comes from it. Even my own house, valuables, and possessions are not exempt from such a fate. I will therefore abandon them. They are going to abandon me, so I will give them away while I am still free to do so for the benefit of the Dharma. So I think she's giving examples of when families might accumulate, like a generation might accumulate, generations of a family might accumulate and gather lots of wealth and land and assets, but then something happens, political or some issue with their family, they have no one to pass their inheritance down to, and then it's taken by the government or by the leader, or anyway, just some leaders confiscate land and property, and all that so many people have worked over so many years to accumulate is just lost in a split second. So this just goes to show the futility of material wealth and the futility of devoting ourselves to accumulating material wealth. Nothing meaningful comes from that. The material wealth itself doesn't really help us, and it's so fleeting and fragile. We can lose it all in the blink of an eye. So this goes to this just makes it all the more important that if and when we do have wealth, we use it in skillful ways so that it can bring about some benefit. That means we use our money to make offerings to the 3 jewels and accumulate merit in that way. And we use it to help those who are in need, those who are sick or vulnerable or impoverished, or to help and support our own parents when they're elderly and in need, and so on. Otherwise, if you just accumulate your money, you save it and pile it up with so much attachment and stinginess, and you don't use it in meaningful ways, nothing good can come from that. You're actually sowing the seed for rebirth as a hungry ghost. There are stories to this end in the words of the Buddha. So those who do have wealth, you need to use it skillfully. If you want it to have meaning, use it skillfully in these ways. Offer it, make offerings with faith and with compassion. Give to those in need. And those who don't have wealth, you don't need to despair, you don't need to feel discouraged. You don't need money and material wealth to practice the Dharma. You can still apply yourself to the Dharma and make offerings of your practice. So Guru Rinpoche says, material wealth is futile, it's just like the honey of bees. So therefore, make whatever you have meaningful. Make it meaningful in the ways just explained. So, as this paragraph reads, in giving them for the Dharma, giving my wealth away for the Dharma, I'm sure to accomplish liberation. This is how to make the best use of your fluctuating possessions which are devoid of essence. As Shantideva says, to think of giving all away is the best way beyond all misery. And as Shantideva clarifies in the way of Bodhisattva, the essence of generosity is a mind willing to give. The essence of generosity is a generous mind, a mind willing to give. So actually you can perfect the paramita of generosity without having anything material to give. If you cultivate that mind of giving, that is enough. That itself is generosity. That mindset is generosity. So at Rahul Monastery, which was Rahul Monastery, Kimboda's Rinpoche's original monastery, I think Rinpoche is saying there was a really super wealthy family. Their wealth was in terms of livestock. And the man from this family, in short, the man from this family was so wealthy. He had so much wealth in terms of livestock and also crops and butter and milk and so on, and all the meat and everything that came from his livestock and land, that he boasted one day. I think he was boasting, saying, "There's no way that I will ever go hungry. There's no way that I'll ever die of starvation. That has never happened to me because of my wealth, and it won't even happen to any of my family, not for generations and generations. That's how wealthy we are." And he said this, I think, to one of the lamas at the Rahul monastery, and they just stayed silent. And everyone thought, yeah, what this man is saying is true because he is that wealthy. But 17 or 18 years later, this very same man, fell sick. He developed a stomach cancer or something similar that prevented him from eating. And he actually ended up dying exactly of starvation. He got this illness that meant that he couldn't eat. He couldn't take food, and so he grew as thin as a skeleton and eventually died. So it just shows one's wealth, no matter how much wealth you have, it can't actually protect you from illness and death. One time when I was younger, I was with my late father, the previous Degyo Rinpoche, and we were all gathered together, a family gathering. I was very young. We were all gathered there together, my father, mother, siblings, uncles, and so on. And it was a happy, full family gathering. And then my father looked around and he said, "We are all gathered here today, but this won't happen again. We won't all be able to gather again." I was very young at the time, but this kind of struck me and made me sad. I thought, why is my father saying this? Of course we'll gather again together, But it went exactly as he said. Shortly after that, one of my uncles died, then another uncle, and then my brother Shiva Rinpoche, and so on. So it just shows we really cannot rely on anything. We are all subject to impermanence and death. So therefore we should not be attached. We should not be attached to the material. That said, one needs to provide for oneself. So especially when one is young, one needs to work. One needs to provide for oneself and also help provide for one's family, one's elderly parents, one's children, and so on. But one should not get excessively attached to wealth, right? You need to survive and have enough to get by, but you don't need to go overboard. There's no need to earn more than you need to survive. And there's no need to one shouldn't get kind of overwhelmed by attachment and caught up in attachment and stinginess and greed. That will destroy one. So we all have to if you have to work, you need to work in order to provide for your family and yourself, but do it in a measured way with impermanence in your heart. So actually funnily enough, of course, the conception of self-grasping is the root of samsara and the root of all suffering, root of all afflictions, root of all faults. And yet at the same time, sometimes self-clinging can help, in the sense sometimes it works well. Like if you have self-clinging, you might earn money and have money, and because of your self-clinging, you have this idea, oh, this is my money, my wealth, and then the thought, oh, I will offer my wealth up to the 3 jewels. With that mind set, within that framework of self-clinging, me and mine, if you offer the wealth that you regard as mine, as yours, then you can accumulate a huge amount of merit, right? So if one makes skillful use of the self-clinging, if one makes skillful use of one's self-clinging, it can actually be a source of great merit. And Rongsa Mahabandita speaks of this in his text as well. So even if you complete things according to the usual, so now we're on the top of page 78, in the future you'll be powerless to enjoy your wealth and possessions. So if now that you're free to do so, you yourself give them away to create merit, you will benefit greatly. And what I just said about making skillful use of self-clinging relates to that. Even if you complete things according to the usual custom, leaving your possessions to others and your will and so on, when you die, there'll be little benefit. But other people's disagreements as you lie there on your deathbed over how your possessions are to be shared out, that will become a source of negative consequences for you. So if you do not give away your wealth before you die, but you entrust it in your will to your children, your spouse, your widow, or what have you, then it's likely that they will end up squabbling over your wealth, fighting over it, even before you've died and after you've died, and that actually will generate a lot of negative karma for you. For this reason, those who've given up worldly life, meaning renunciants, those who devoted themselves to practice, and those who aspire to the Dharma, should begin their practice by learning to have few desires, to reduce their desire, to have few desires and to have contentment. With few desires, one joins the family of sublime beings. With no desires at all, one actually is a sublime being. So in this way, it's said that contentment is a noble quality. Contentment is the wealth of noble beings. Always train, therefore, in having few desires, in limiting, reducing one's desires, in being content with what you have, and being content with having just enough to get by. Instead of thinking that when you have one thing, then you desire something more, you're never being content with what you have and always wanting more and more. As it says here, the one training in Dharma, a practitioner, should always train in having few desires. Because there is no point in wealth, there is no real meaning to material wealth. Just like Milarepa said, when you have a house, you don't have a house owner. When you have a house owner, you don't have a house. Speaking to the futility of material wealth. Well, for instance, you see people who, like someone I know who strived to get a visa to America, eventually managed to get it. They were like you could say, financial migrant. They went over there, they worked so hard, night and day for many years to accumulate money. Eventually they fulfilled their wish of having enough money to buy some land, build a house. But shortly after that, they got cancer and they died before they could enjoy the very thing that they had spent most of their life striving for. So this is just how it goes in one way or another with material wealth, with striving after material wealth. Therefore, train always in having few desires. Reflect on how even in this life, happiness in the earlier part of one's life changes to suffering in the latter part. Recognize that it's the nature of things that fortunes decline, youth does not last forever, friends and relations separate, and that there is nothing one can rely on. In doing so, you should develop a feeling of total disenchantment related to the impermanent nature of things. So we have pretty much covered these points, these reflections already. So we won't add much explanation here. In the Sutra of Extensive Play, Buddha says, men should know that the pleasures of the senses are like the reflection of the moon in water, like images in a mirror, echoes off a cliff, and optical illusions, like the spectacles of a dance and like dreams. No matter what you might attain, it doesn't last. You might be proud of your youth, of your looks, of your wealth, of your attainments, of your status. But there is no use, there is no point in being proud of those things. There's no point in giving them any importance because they are utterly fleeting and utterly without substance. There are people who are wealthy in the morning, but by the evening they've become beggars. Our youth, our looks, our situation, these things do not last. They're not reliable. Then we have a quotation from the Nirvana Sutra that speaks to the same thing. Now the next reflection, reflecting on the uncertainty of when one will die. First of all, since one's lifespan is uncertain, there's no uncertainty when one will die. There is no certainty when one will die. You might think, of course I'll die in the end, but I won't die for a while yet. What's all the hurry? Yeah, I know I'm going to die one day, but I'm not going to die right now, so what's all the stress about? Well, that is a complete mistake to think like that. We literally do not know. I cannot say when we're going to die. There are some people who seem healthy and well, but literally within the course of minutes, something happens and they're dead. We just can never be sure. The length of time beings live, apart from those in Uttarakuru, which is one of the 4 continents, is generally quite uncertain. And this is especially true in our world, where beings' lifespans are extremely unpredictable. So at the beginning of this eon, or this world system, beings' lives could last an infinite number of years, but in the end it will be no longer than 10 years. So the lifespan of beings is decreasing bit by bit, and eventually it'll be that humans only live for 10 years. And then the next Buddha, Regent Maitreya, will appear, and slowly then the tides will turn and beings will start to live longer. Their lifespans will increase again, and all of this is due to the karma of beings, right? The virtue and non-virtue that beings accumulate. Here it is unpredictable. At the end, 10 years. In the beginning, immeasurable. This is describing the fluctuating lifespans of beings in this world. From that very night, when a person first enters the womb, his life is running out. It cannot be topped up. And there's no going back on what is past. In the morning, one sees many people. In the evening, some will no longer be seen, and so on. In the morning, you might meet someone. On the same day in the evening, they might already be dead. There are some beings who are born in the morning, newborn baby, but by nighttime that newborn baby is dead. Some die inside the womb, others die while they're being born, some just when they've begun to crawl, some when they can get up and run. Some when old, and some when young. Some are people in the prime of youth. One by one they will depart like ripe fruit dropping from a tree. Some die young, some die old, some die healthy, some die after a long illness. Some who even take their own lives, some die in terrible circumstances. Some die in crazy, tormented states of mind. Not only do they take their own lives, but they take others' lives along with them. Like you hear about people these days driving their cars into crowds of people and killing themselves and 30 or so people along with them. These horrific ways that people are dying and killing others. It's impossible to calculate starting from today and based on how many years have passed, how many more years you have to come. There is no certainty. You might not even reach more than 30 or 40. These days, life expectancy has fallen under 30 years and is closer to 20. So even if we have the time for our life to run its full course, it can't last longer than that. At the end of a day, we've breathed in and out 21,000 times. 30 days makes a month. So a healthy person breathes in and out 21,000 times a day. 30 days make a month, 12 months make a year, and 12 years are termed a cycle, a 12-year cycle, according to the Tibetan calendar. And when at the end of 3 cycles, meaning 36 years, it's time for us to die, it will seem as if no more than an hour has passed since we were born. If we think about it, we are no different. So wherever we are, we see or hear of people dying suddenly, and if we think about it, we are no different from them. So in the past, there were a few people who would die in sudden accidents and so on, but most people would die in bed. Most people would die, we could say, a natural death. These days, the opposite is the case. There are so many people who die in accidents or in sudden circumstances, in unforeseen circumstances, and fewer people who die a so-called natural death. That said, modern medicine, it's true, modern medicine has provided cures for a lot of illnesses, and also pain management and so on, so that in a sense a lot of people are surviving illnesses that in the past people wouldn't have survived. But no medicine can save one from death. No medicine can put death off forever. In the end, we all have to die. There is just no way around it. Even if you can afford the best doctor in the world, still you will die eventually. So, Katok Gyaltse Rinpoche, for instance, just to mention one amongst so many of our Nyingma lamas. Even these great beings are accomplished. So many great qualities, who are learned, realized, learned, realized, and blessed masters. Even they are not immune to accidents. Even they are not immune to sudden death. The master I mentioned is just one example. He died suddenly, very suddenly and unexpectedly. We might think that at least the teachers, realized practitioners, are immune to such things as sudden death, but they're not. We can look around and see many great masters who die suddenly at a young age. And we find that shocking, right? Unbearable and overwhelming. So we all need to take this to heart. None of us are immune to death, to sudden death. We need to think about this. take it to heart right now, here and now, and apply ourselves to the Dharma. Chant a round of money mantras while we can, while we have the chance, because honestly we do not know. We're all sitting here now receiving the teachings, but tomorrow, who knows? Honestly, some of us might already have passed away. Otherwise, if we don't reflect on impermanence, on the truth of impermanence, then when it does strike, as it inevitably will, taking our lives or the lives of our loved ones, say your husband, your wife, your child, someone close to you, then you might not be able to take it. And then you do see people who are driven crazy by grief because they cannot accept, cannot accommodate the truth of impermanence. Today at least I shall not die, so rash to lull myself with words like these. This life is impermanent like an earthenware vase. One cannot be sure which will come first. An earthenware vase is fragile. You drop it on the floor and it smashes into pieces. Our life is just as fragile as that. Tomorrow or the perceptions of the next world, which will come first, we do not know. So from today onward, practice the sublime Dharma. These are the words of Longchenpa. So you might make plans for tomorrow and think, oh, well, tomorrow I'll do this and that. Tomorrow I'll have a grand time. I'll go out and have fun. But you really don't know whether you're going to live to see tomorrow. You might die before then. You might arrive in your next life before you arrive in tomorrow. Now we dedicate the merit and stop here for today.